So I want to thank you for joining me today for our SaeboStretch monthly product webinar. The SaeboStretch is like no other splint out there, at least from what I've ever seen. And I love this device and use it with almost every one of my clients. Just to give you a little background, my name is Dr. Scott Thompson. I am a doctor of occupational therapy and the director of clinical services here at Saebo. I do want to apologize if you hear in the background my 11-month-old daughter, with these times now with people at home. Sometimes we have kids on our presentations and calls, but I want to thank you. She shouldn't be too loud if you do hear her at all. And lastly, I wanted to give everybody who is not familiar with Saebo just a little bit of a background. In 2001, two brothers who are occupational therapists started Saebo. And what got them started in this process was they were sort of fed up with not being able to treat the hand of their neurologically impaired patients. And back in the early 2000s, the interventions that were out there were really limited to treating the shoulder, the elbow, and so you had a bunch of people that were moving around with some shoulder and elbow movement, but there were really no solutions or interventions that showed how to get the hand functionally re-engaged in recovery. And so they started experimenting with different things and different approaches and developed the Saebo Flex. And the Saebo Flex is our flagship device. It is what we used to be known for, and it is an excellent device for people with moderate to severe spasticity, and really from the very beginning of a neurological impairment all the way through. There's even a study by the NIH of someone who used it 23 years post-stroke, and they found that you can make motor recovery and decrease spasticity and involve the hand in neurologically impaired clients, even if they have moderate to severe spasticity. Now, fast forward 15 plus years from its creation, and you now have an entire arsenal that Saebo offers of products, and I'll talk about them in just a second. But essentially, we have a product for everyone, whether you're in the acute phase, which is, you just are in the hospital, in a trauma center, and there's multiple research out there that says from day one you need to start working on recovery, and a lot of times people don't get that, but really there's a sensitive period where you really need to start working. So we have products to help people from day one all the way through 23 years and beyond, whether you're in the clinic or at home. And that was our whole purpose, is because we want to help as many people as possible, because we know that there's some pitfalls in the medical system, especially here in the US, that leave people without the resources and the care that they need to really get better. So we have an entire selection of products and kits that are out there. We have up here in the right corner, we have our orthotics devices. This is the Saebo glove. The Saebo glove is a low-profile functional splint that helps people extend their fingers after grasping an object. A lot of times when people who have neurological impairments have issues, they can train themselves to close their hand, but they don't necessarily have that ability to open their hand or put their hand or wrist into a functional position to allow them to participate in those occupationally based tasks that they want to. So this functional splint can be used throughout the day and helps people extend their fingers. There was an email I got from someone very recently that said his job was, I think he had an incomplete spinal cord injury, and his job was in a car dealership. He was cleaning cars, swapping out the license plates, etc., and he used that Saebo glove throughout the workday. And then next to that, we have the Saebo Flex. The Saebo Flex is and the Saebo Reach are that flagship device that I talked about for people with moderate to severe spasticity. And it's a spring-loaded finger assist system that allows people to train through repetitive task-oriented training of grasp and release, usually with a poof ball, as you can see in this picture. And through that training, we found that not only do improvements in hand strength and motor control get better in the hand, but it also helps you train the entire upper limb at the same time. And there's research that has shown that. Here we have the SaeboStretch, which I'm going to talk about today in our presentation, so I won't go any further, but that is our one-of-a-kind dynamic resting hand splint. Down here we have our electrical stimulation devices. Here we have the SaeboStim Micro. The SaeboStim Micro works on your sensory motor cortex, which is right next to the motor cortex. Essentially, it works on all your sensations, so it'll help you with pain and edema, circulation. If you have hypersensitivity to touch, if you don't really feel anything, nonetheless, it helps you work on that sensory side of your recovery, which a lot of times research has shown therapists will test for, but actually never really work on. Another thing that it helps with in sensory is proprioception, if you have heard of that term, and that is really the joints of your body knowing where your limb is in space. So there are people who will have their arm up over their head, but the connection or the sensory input to the brain doesn't let them know that. So how can you be functional with your arm if you have no clue where it is in space? So you definitely need to work on that. Here we have the SaeboStim 1. The SaeboStim 1 is our wireless wearable electrical stimulation device. It is a device that we have made electrical stimulation super simple. You pretty much put it in place. It has a set of wings that move up and down so you can hit the right locations. You turn it on by holding a button, and then you turn it up and it goes. There's no parameters, there's no wires, and you can get 24 hours of use out of it before it needs to be recharged, and it recharges by a USB port. So very, very modern and very, very, very easy to use. I also want to say that it was originally designed for shoulder subluxation because protocols for that were multiple different wires from an eStim device, and people were having to use that electrical stimulation for 6 hours at a time each day. They had benefits if you could actually do it for 6 hours, but we have some tests that are being conducted on what we see in the clinic as making it a lot easier to do shoulder subluxation. But what's really cool about it too is that you can use it in multiple parts of your body. So you can use it all over your upper limb for your biceps and triceps for moving your elbow. You can use it on your wrist and your hand muscles. You can use it on your legs. I've used it on my quads. I've tested it on my glutes. I've tested it on my calves, which are the gastrocnemius and soleus muscles. So you can use it all across your body. You can also use it on the muscles on the front of your shin to help you with foot drop, and at least foot drop training. It's not a device to help you walk. It's just for the training and strengthening of muscles. Down here we have the mirror box, which I still think is an underutilized adjunct to therapy. Research shows that if you put a mirror box therapy into your home exercise program or whatever program you're doing right now, you have to sprinkle it in a couple times a week, a couple or a few. The more the merrier. Actually, the more the better the results. But nonetheless, if you can put it in, research shows that whether you're doing nothing or you're doing in-clinic work or you actually have a home exercise program, you will have significant improvements when you do visual imagery. Because what you do is you trick yourself into seeing that the affected limb or the one that's not moving well. By looking into the mirror, you can see that hand moving. I worked with a group of people very recently, and a couple of them, after just about 1 minute, all of a sudden their brain was saying, oh, shoot, that is my other hand moving. And a few of them took a little bit longer, but by 10 minutes, all of the group of, what did I have, 8 or 9 people, they all were believing that they were seeing their other limb moving. And that's the true strength and benefit of the Saebo mirror box. Not to mention, it's a very large mirror, which is very limited on anything else on the market. Here we have the SaeboStep. one of our most popular products. It's an out-of-the-shoe AFO, and will actually be the topic of next month's webinar, as well as I love this device because it helps people get out of those big clunky plastic AFOs, or the ones that limit the movement. It helps you wear regular clothing. People can wear pants over the top of it. You don't have to buy shoes of 2 different sizes or buy extra large shoes to fit your AFO in it. It works on the outside and really helps people progress with being independent and getting back to making progress with their ambulation or their walking and ability to stand and move around. And I have never had a person not want to have the Saebo step after they try it in my treatment. That AFO is long gone. It's not for everyone, of course, we know that, but definitely give it a try if you want to really move forward with your ability. And then over here we have our clinical products. This is our all-in-one electrical stimulation. You have biofeedback, you have electrical stimulation parameters, you have EMG trigger stimulation, which means you have to create a certain amount of muscle contraction before you get the electrical stimulation. And then also we have our reciprocal EMG trigger, which means you work with clients, training them to shut off their spasticity and drop that electrical activity or that muscle contraction that they have. And by doing it below a certain threshold, then they get rewarded with the E-stim on the muscles that you want. Here we have our Saebo VR, which is an activities of daily living and instrumental activities of daily living, or ADL, IDL training system. Great benefits and research on that. We have our Saebo Rejoice, which is a virtual reality gaming system. And it's unique because the very end of it, if you can see in this little picture, there are, you can maybe see the yellow dots right here. Those are your, this is the manipulandum on the very end. And essentially the controls, instead of having a joystick or you know, something like a video game where you've got buttons and stuff to push, it actually is a repetitive training device that you use opening a jar or turning a key or picking up coins or you know, tip to tip, finger pinch. All of those different types of grasps are actually your triggers for the video game. So while you're having fun and people are laughing, which we have all the time, we're laughing at while we play this game, you're actually doing the repetitive training that research says is a benefit and is what helps further neuroplasticity. And then here we have the Saebo MOS, which is a zero gravity mobile arm support that helps support the arm and allow people to do functional tasks when they have a weakened shoulder, weakened arm. Great example of this is I had one lady post-stroke who had her arm really tight and next to her body. And when I asked her to sort of reach out in front of her to touch an object on the table, the arm really moved across her body. And I put her into our home device, which is called the Saebo MOS Mini. And immediately she was able to extend her arm and touch something on the table. And of course, tears started pouring, and that's why we love rehab and producing devices like this. But just remember that we have devices for any one of your clients or anyone that you know that has a neurologically and some orthopedic issues as well, whether they're in the acute phase of recovery, subacute phase, or the chronic phase. We have something that can help everyone. Now, one of the biggest things is we know that people that have upper limb issues, usually, especially if you are recovering from a stroke, which is a vast number of our population. I want to say the CDC reported something like almost 800,000 US people a year have a stroke, and you know, nearly 700,000 of them are people for the first time. Nonetheless, part of the recovery process of neurological recovery is having some type of spasticity, and if that spasticity is not treated, usually it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And there's a big issue when it comes to what people typically prescribe as a splint for someone who has spasticity, because there's really two parts of treating an upper limb with spasticity or a hand with spasticity, and that is the positioning, but also the dynamic part of the spasticity, the movement that occurs from things like coughing or sneezing or things that you plan to do, like standing up or walking. All of those movements trigger this spasticity to usually increase. And when people supply splints like the ones that you see here in these pictures, there's actually really not research that really supports them. It shows that they're good for that positioning part of the recovery, but nothing to do with the spasticity. And that dynamic component is what makes the SaeboStretch so unique. It's because if you can see from all of these pictures, the fingers are curled. And when that spasticity increases, the wrist and the fingers usually curl, but they're pushing against something that is metal or plastic. It's sort of like trying to push against a brick wall. You're not going to get very far. And if you do that repetitively over time, you start to get joint deformities and tissue damage, and people will pop their tendons or pop their joints out of place, and it can get very ugly. I've seen many ugly deformities, and I say ugly just because it's one of those things when you look at it that anybody outside the medical field will be like, oh my gosh, what happened? It looks very traumatic. But it's actually because they were prescribed a splint that was not meant for their spastic hand or that level of spasticity that they have. And so what we really want to do is ask people to ask themselves, whether you're a clinician or someone that's in recovery, should static splints be contraindicated when dealing with hypertonicity or that tightness in the muscles? And we at Saebo really believe they should be, because we see deformities and injuries to the joints and the tissues of the hand and wrist because people are put in the wrong splints for their recovery. So what I want to tell you, I was talking about static splints in the last slide, but what I want to tell you is that research has shown that dynamic splints work very well on the spastic upper limb. In fact, research on both static and dynamic splints became very prevalent in sort of the 80s into the 90s and 2000s. And the ones, recently I was doing a continuing education course, and I really sort of dove into this topic. And what I found was that the static splints, though people still use them to this day, and if you ask me why, I really can't give you a great answer. I'm going to say uninformed, and maybe just following trends or the advice of somebody. But for 40 years, there have been studies that originally showed, yes, you can get benefits from it, but there was nothing that was longitudinally, or it didn't show that it lasted or that it worked very well. And then there were tons and tons of research showing that static splints actually really did not do well, but yet they're still prescribed today. But back in as far as 1985, as far as I could find, there was research that's shown that dynamic splints reduce increased tone much better than static splinting. But yet the medical trend in the US, we still use static splints. Truthfully, I think they're just missed. I think there needs to be a dynamic shift. And I don't mean a pun on that word because we're talking about dynamic splints, but there really needs to be more education on why we need to change if somebody has moderate to severe spasticity. Do not use a static splint. Even mild is pushing it. So as you can see, we've got 35 years of research that says that dynamic splints work for spasticity. And it has been proven and shown that it helps reduce spasticity in the wrist and the fingers, and also that it can help improve dexterity, or that fine motor coordination that therapists are always focusing on. It can help improve grip strength, motor control, and typical natural movement patterns that we're always trying to elicit in therapy, pain of the wrist and hand, as well as range of motion of the wrist, hand, and sometimes the elbow as well. So this is what makes a dynamic or the SaeboStretch so great and unique. It's the dynamic hand plate that allows someone's spasticity to kick in without giving it resistance. So, or very limited. It allows that hand to really have this, or it allows the spasticity to really go through the movement that it wants. But as the person stops coughing or sneezing, or they sit down, or they relax their limb, whatever it is, that tone's going to start to decrease, or that spasticity will start to decrease. And then the energy storing hand plate that I'll talk about a little bit later helps push that hand back into a nice, safe resting position for both the tissues and the joints. So as you can see, this person's tone kicks in, and then the hand plate pushes it back once the tone starts to release. Like I said, I love this device. Here are the features of the SaeboStretch. One of the first things that I notice are all the different straps. There are 7 straps on the SaeboStretch. You have 2 forearm straps over here. See if I can find the pointer. There we go. 2 forearm straps over here. You have the hand strap to keep the top of the hand in the right position. And there's a hidden gem underneath here that I'll talk about in a sec. That is inside the splint. We have a thumb strap to hold the thumb in place. We have 2 straps to hold the fingers in place so that there's no pressure over what we call the PIP, or the middle joints of your fingers, but allows for us to strap down the longer fingers of the hand. And then we also have a separate one for keeping the pinky in place. And the reason that we have the thumb and the pinky spread out is because it helps keep the natural palmar arch that is in your hand. So if you think about the arch on your foot, if you go around without support of your arch, that arch starts to shift, and the muscles shift, and all the bones of your foot shift, and what happens? You have an aching foot, and eventually you have some type of other, you could get a deformity, or you could get plantar fasciitis, or all of those different types of things where tissues and bones have been damaged. Same thing happens to your hand. When people don't use their hand, they're not moving their hand around as much, and they're also not keeping the muscles in the hand and the forearm strong, so that hand actually flattens out, and they get what's nicknamed a flat hand. And that hidden gem that I said is underneath this strap is actually a padding that helps keep that natural palmar arch in your hand and keeps the bone alignment and the tissues doing what they're going where they're supposed to, and everything being in the position that it's supposed to be. I also want to say that there is the Breathe-A-Preen cover that allows for air circulation while you're wearing the splint. So that's what this black. This blue is actually non-slip strips to help the hand and the finger stay in the right place, and the SaeboStretch to stay in position. You also have 2 parts of the splint that move. You have the wrist that is made out of malleable or bend metal that you can bend, and you can bend it, what we suggest or research suggests, to 35 degrees down towards the floor or up towards the ceiling, depending on where in the recovery process and the tissue lengthening process someone is when they wear the SaeboStretch. Having the fingers pointed down towards the ground, for somebody who's used to having their hand or their wrist sort of in a bent position, that's probably where you're going to start. But because it allows for you to reposition the wrist, you can progressively over time, maybe every week or every 2 weeks, adjust that angle up until your fingers are pointing up towards the ceiling, so that you can work on stretching out the tendons that are attached to your fingers and your wrist little by little over time, and getting that length that you want. Because if we don't know by now, look at the popularity of yoga, right? Yoga allows you to stretch things out as well as get strong. And as the research slide I showed you before, grip strength and range of motion are 2 things that come with a dynamic splint. This allows you to reposition the wrist as you need it to keep those fingers on stretch, which helps reduce the spasticity, but also allows you to position it where you're comfortable and where you need to be at that specific time in your recovery. Another thing that is movable is the thumb system. there are two different directions that the thumb system moves. It can move out, away from your fingers, so directly in line with your fingers, but it could also move down and underneath your fingers. So depending on where you need to be, if you have a tight webbing on the thumb right here, webbing between your pointer finger and your thumb, then maybe you need to position the thumb sort of in this direction for right now, but you can progressively move it until we get into what the co-founder of this company, Henry Hoffman, calls thumption, which is sort of the halfway position between perfectly parallel with the side of your pointer finger and then also 90 degrees down from the side of your fingers. And you want to sort of be in the middle of that and keeping a little bit of a stretch on that webbing here. Some additional features are that the straps are non-slip, but they're also sewn in. So a lot of other devices might not have the straps sewn in, and you have to reposition the straps, or you don't. If you take them apart to wash them, then you have to put them back on, and you'll never really. It can be a pain. We'll just put it that way. Or they can get connected to each other, and it can be a big mess. So it helps with the proper positioning and the ease of donning or putting on the device. We also have a zipper that is attached from the very back of the splint up near your elbow all the way down and around the thumb system. And that is so that you can unzip it so you can remove the internal plate, which allows you to take and wash the wash the cover, as well as disinfect the splint if you feel like it, and adjust the hand plate and the thumb system that are held on by screws. Also, something I didn't mention was that there is a thumb stop on the actual thumb system. It is bent up right here. It's the thumb block, if you will. That's why we call it a stop. So because when spasticity kicks in, sometimes your finger wants to draw in underneath your fingers or in towards your palm, and that is there to help you resist that movement. We have stabilizing wings for control of the forearm, so that's for helping you when you're putting it on. Also for keeping the splint in position on your forearm, as well as if you have edema in your upper limb, with a lot of people with hemiparesis do from lack of movement. If that edema decreases, then your arm's going to be skinnier, so those stabilizing wings are adjustable for how wide or how skinny your forearm is. And then last but not least, we have that energy storing hand plate that makes the SaeboStretch so unique, and that is to accommodate for those tonal changes that your hand has, as well as protect those joints in every position, whether spasticity or tone is kicked in or not. So here is what the dynamic handpiece looks like. The SaeboStretch comes with 3 dynamic hand plates. The yellow hand plate is the least resistant, sort of like if you were using TheraBand or that rubber band stuff from the clinic. We have blue, which is the most resistance, and then we have a red hand plate that comes actually attached to the system, and it allows for the variability and the specific needs of the person that's using the stretch, and also while they progress. So as you start to stretch out your fingers, you might need less resistance. If you're having a day or a week where your spasticity is increased, or you're doing a lot of moving around and that hand's really challenging the plate that you have in there, then you can also go up a little bit in the resistance, and or if your tone is sort of on the higher end, you might want to start with the blue one. But always we put the middle grade on there because then you can either go up or down. And it's pretty simple to actually change these out as well. I made a video on YouTube that shows you just how to do that, as well as you just have to unzip the zipper, goes up and around, pull the splint out, and there are just screws that you loosen, and you can slide off the one handpiece, put the other one back on, and then tighten those screws and put the splint back in and zip it up, and you're good to go. I also want to let you know that we have not forgot the pediatric size for the SaeboStretch. Research does show that you can use this dynamic splints and have great benefits for the pediatric population, those with neurological stuff like cerebral palsy or any other neurological impairment. We now, as of 2019, have 5 different sizes. allowing for different options for various clients. We have a large, a medium, a small, an extra small, which is this one here, and an extra extra small, which is this one here. And those splints, the extra small and the extra extra small, come in blue and purple because most of the time pediatric users will be using them, and kids always love something with a little pop of color. I also want to say that combining the SaeboStretch with other devices is beneficial and more efficient for your recovery. Essentially, as a clinician, I like to tell people the more that you do, the better. You know, it's very hard to get motivated to do things. And so if you can do them more efficiently, you're going to have better bang for your buck. So this picture on the left is showing someone wearing the SaeboStretch, but also our SaeboStim Micro. So while she's putting her hand in a great position following, this was during one of our trainings, it was following a 45-minute session with the Saebo Flex, which makes her hand super loose. Then we put her in this to maintain that looseness and the nice positioning of the hand. We also put on the SaeboStim Micro because now not only is she protecting all of that hard work she did to get that hand open and resting, but she's now doing a prolonged stretch to those tissues that are usually short and getting sensory input into her brain, helping with cortical excitability and development of neurons in the brain. And one great benefit, besides that you can wear this during the day, is that you can also wear it at night. The SaeboStretch can be worn day or night, and most of the time as a clinician, research tells you that you want to wear the splint from 6 to 12 hours. And what we need to do is really focus on getting or working up to that amount of wear. So most of the time, just like when you buy new shoes, unless you buy those shoes that are already broken in for you, most of the time you have to progressively wear your shoes for a longer period of time so that you don't get blisters or skin breakdown or have soreness, etc. And that's the same with when you're wearing a new device. You want to use it periodically to lengthen to the appropriate amount of time. So most of the time you'll start with an hour, maybe 2, and then over a week's time work up to 6, 8, 10, 12 hours, depending on what you can tolerate. You don't want to have a negative reaction. You don't want to be unmotivated because you tried to wear it for 8 or 10 hours on the very first day. You want to work up to that amount of time, as well as if you can wear it while you sleep, then you're not even having to think about it. You could just put it on. If you're having, for some reason, sometime during the day, you're getting some spasticity from stress or from movement, etc., then you might want to put that on for a shorter period of times to help reduce that spasticity, but you're getting great benefit while you sleep. Same goes for when you're wearing the SaeboStim Micro. You can wear that because it has a day and a nighttime program, and that will give you 8 hours of cortical stimulation while you're sleeping. So not only are you protecting your joints and putting your tissues on stretch to reduce your spasticity and help with overall recovery, but then you can also combine it with your SaeboStim to get the cortical sensory input that you need. So what is that saying? Two birds with one stone? That is exactly what we're talking about. Being very efficient and getting tons of input to your brain and to your body. And then you can also combine the SaeboStretch with the SaeboStim Go or One, and that is because you can work on the weakened muscles. So a lot of times what we'll do is get somebody positioned very correctly and let them sit there for just a little bit of time to get the body used to it, and then put on the SaeboStim Go on the muscles that are weak on the back side of the hand, and then run, turn up the intensity and run and loosen some of these straps just to get the fingers and the wrist to start extending. If somebody has a pretty loose hand, then you could probably undo all of the straps, and then you can actually get the wrist to bend up and point those fingers towards the ceiling. But if you still have some tightness or a mild to moderate amount of spasticity, then that's you want to keep some of those straps on just to keep the hand in the right position. One thing I did forget to mention in the very beginning was that really this device is meant for people with no spasticity up to moderate spasticity. You don't want to do severe spasticity with this splint because of the way that it's been designed. It won't have enough resistance. What you really need to do is start training with the Saebo Flex to get your hand loose and get that spasticity to decrease. Then you can wear that the SaeboStretch. Like I said, with this picture on the left, this lady had just done a 45-minute training session, and then we put the SaeboStretch on. Now, one last thing I want to mention is that for any of the clients or patients on the line, you in the United States of America can get a 30-day money-back free trial. I apologize to any of our international clients, but it really depends on who our international partner is. You need to talk to them about your devices. But in the US, you get the item shipped directly to your home. You can try it, wear it, and use it as much as you want to determine if it is the right solution for you. Unlike Amazon Prime, or I don't remember what the name of it is, but like when you order stuff online, they want it to come back in peak perfect condition. And we're not asking that of you because we want to make sure that it is the right solution for you. We want you to wear it. We want you to contact your representative or clinical support to ask questions on how to properly use this device. And we give you 30 days to really use it and test it out to see if it's going to be a great benefit for you. If not, which is sort of a rare thing, but if not, you just contact us, and within 30 days, and we'll provide you instructions on how to ship the item back. Returning to the device for any reason is a 100% refund, as well as no risk and no hassle guaranteed. We pretty much want to know if there's anything that we can help you with, but that's, and then where we need to send the device. And then also for any of the clinicians on here, there are offerings of both our patient products, our individual products, and the clinical products shown here, as well as any of our kits. One of our most popular ones is the hand treatment kit that comes with almost every one of the patient products in it, and it's essentially great for inpatient or outpatient clinics. And it gives you a plethora of things to treat all the neurological symptoms that you'll probably see. Nonetheless, we offer a 2-week in-clinic demo. Now, here it says free 10 days, but that's because we usually work on a 5-day work week. But nonetheless, if you can get it for 2 weeks to trial it. And one of the things that we want is we want you to involve your entire team. I used to be a director of multiple facilities, as well as used to work in standalone inpatient clinics for Health South, which is now I think is Encompass Health. Nonetheless, you don't want to be the only one that knows about these great products. You want to share it with your other clinicians. You want to share it with your directors, managers, your other, if you work in a hospital system, like I used to work in big ones in Texas, you want to share it with your inpatient and your acute rehab and your chronic and your subacute, and you want to let everybody know, as well as the administrators. Administrators are always wondering what's going to be the best, why we have things and what we do in the rehab area, and letting them and bringing them in and showing them how it works and how beneficial it is, and all the positive outcomes that you can get from our products is exactly what an administrator wants to see. You also can use it, contact the marketing team as well, because a lot of times I've worked with facilities out in the middle of Texas that their competition is maybe 1 or 2 more clinics, but even in downtown Dallas, you can market for you have Saebo products, which sets you apart from your competitors, because in large urban areas, you have tons of competitors, and you need to set yourself apart. But again, that's more of a administrative talk there. We also offer free shippings and returns to and from the clinic, and there's no obligation. We just we talk to you, and we even do have some trials where people are testing out different products for us, and we love to work with some of those partners that are interested in doing research, etc. So please contact us if you're interested. One last thing I want to mention is that next month we're going to be talking about the Saebo Step. So introducing the SaeboStep, the replacement for bulky, uncomfortable AFOs. That was a title that pretty much described exactly what people say when they start using the SaeboStep. Remember that the SaeboStep is not for everyone, but because we, at least in the US, we have the 30-day money-back guarantee, I urge you for any of our products to try them out and see if it'll help you with moving forward in your recovery. And again, that's next month on May 20th, and that's 2020. And then, of course, it's at 2 o'clock. So I want to thank you for joining us for today's webinar talking about the SaeboStretch, and hope that you found this informative as well as answered any of your questions. And I'm about to answer a few additional questions here. For information on this device or any other of our innovative devices, just go to www.saebo.com and you can check out and get more information. We also have a toll-free number. You can contact us through chat and you can talk to a representative, or you can contact, if you already own some of our equipment or the SaeboStretch and you want to ask some clinical questions, we do have clinical support at saebo.com to answer those types of questions. All right, let's take a few questions here. All right, so the first question is this device covered by insurance? Yes, the device in the US is covered by insurance, but just like every insurance plan, there's not one that is the same as anyone else. So you really are going to have to look into what the insurance plan is, and also see if it'll be covered for that specific company or that plan. You know, Blue Cross and Blue Shield is one of the largest, and they have plans that cover it, plans that don't. So most of the time, we suggest that you go through either the place that you're getting treatment at, or go through a local vendor or orthotist, prosthetist, and they can help you determine if it's going to be covered or not. Let's see what else. All right, here's another question. Why did we choose blue and pink? I guess you're talking about the PD or the extra small and extra small. Again, through discussion and what we've seen with other products that are in recovery, a lot of the pediatric population want colors and bright things and fun things. I know when I used to work in pediatric clinics, we would take duct tape and tape up walkers or tape up assistive devices, and just to make them more fun and colorful and playful. And so when we designed these, we offered the color of blue and pink so that they had some color options that went with pretty much every other color, and wasn't just black. Which is nothing wrong with that. It's just, like I said, the pediatric population wants pink or wants color. Here's another question. Can you do exercises in the SaeboStretch? Yes, but only exercises. I would only suggest doing exercises like I suggested, where it was more using the SaeboStretch as a flat supportive surface, maybe using electrical stimulation, or having them or doing exercises where you're actually making your wrist or hand move in the opposite direction of the splint. We don't want to use the actual SaeboStretch as an exercise device. It's not meant to be used for that, and I would definitely not recommend using it. But while wearing it, you can use it for positioning and a platform or a place to return your hand to the proper position when you're done doing a movement. But don't use the SaeboStretch for exercise. Next, I would like, let's see, what's this? Yes, you can use, there's a question here, you can use the electrical stimulation on the device. It doesn't have to be the SaeboStim Go. I just recommend the SaeboStim Go because it's a very versatile, easy to use wireless wearable device. So I've used it on myself and multiple muscles, and that's why I'm encourage people to use that device. If you have a different electrical stimulation device that has the wires and the pads, you can use that as well. I prefer using the SaeboStim Go because it's just much simpler. If you're a person that has experience with it, or you have a caregiver or a therapist that can help you with the wired type of electrical stimulation, then so be it. Go for it. See what else. All right, we'll answer this question. The SaeboStretch. So the question is, how do you know that it's fitted correctly? The SaeboStretch, as you saw in the picture, is meant to have your hand flat across the support that is for the palmar arch, as well as having the thumb and the fingers strapped down and in a proper position. I know that through years of clinical experience that not always can you get a perfect position, but it's also who really wants to be perfect. I mean, if you get the SaeboStretch on and you're noticing that you're in good positioning and your spasticity is decreasing and your hand is in the right position, that the Energy Stirring hand plate is going to move when your spasticity or tone increases, and then it helps you extend your fingers back to a supportive position and relaxed position afterwards, then you've got it on correctly. Again, you can reference our YouTube page. Just type in Saebo, S-A-E-B-O, and you can find videos on fitting. I did one recently that was commonly asked questions, and you just have to, there's tons of videos on there for all of our products, and it's a great resource. Same as going to our website, we have multiple videos and information on there as well. And don't forget that you have a manual that comes with your device also, and that has fitting instructions and instructions on how to set up the proper wrist angle, etc. All right, everybody, I want to thank you for joining me. There are more questions on here, and if there are very specific ones that need to be answered, you can contact clinical support at clinicalsupport.com, and I hope everyone has a safe and wonderful day. Bye-bye now.